The desert remembers what mercy forgets. Once they rode together. Now they hunt each other through a world built from ash and guilt. In the dying light of the frontier, the line between love and revenge fades to dust. The sun was falling apart at the edges, a bleeding coin sinking slow behind the black spines of the mesas. The air shimmered, red and gold, hot enough to taste. Every sound carried far. The wind scraping over the rock, the rattle of a horse's reins, the dry click of a revolver's hammer testing memory. Maeve Calder rode alone. The brim of her hat threw a long shadow across her face, but her eyes still caught the last light. 2 shards of sky, hard and tired. Her duster was torn at the hem and caked with sand. One saddlebag was half open, showing the worn handle of a Colt she hadn't cleaned in days. The other held the wanted poster she didn't need to look at anymore. Elias Ward, 1,500. Dead or alive. She'd memorized every line of that face, every angle of that jaw. Once her hand had traced it. Now she meant to put a bullet through it. The horse stumbled on a patch of loose gravel. Maeve steadied the reins and muttered something soft in its ear. Not comfort, just rhythm. She'd been riding since dawn, following tracks half buried by the desert wind. Tracks made by a man who still believed he could run from her. She reached the ridge before night and stopped. Below her, the land spread out like a broken altar. A half-dead river snaked through the canyon, glinting like mercury in the dusk. On the far side stood a town, a crooked handful of buildings clustered around a single lamppost flickering against the dark. She squinted. Even from here, she could smell it. Whiskey, gun oil, and secrets. Sable's Rest. She hadn't seen it in 5 years. Last time, the place had been half on fire, echoing with the screams of men who'd thought they were immortal. That was the night the gang fell apart. The night Elias betrayed them. Maeve dismounted slow, boots crunching in the dust. She pulled her rifle from the saddle, checked the chamber. 6 rounds. Clean enough. She tilted her head toward the town again, and for a moment, her reflection caught in the rifle's barrel. Her own face, gaunt and ghost-pale, the faint scar that cut her lip where his ring once had. She smiled without humor. Let's see if the preacher still remembers his prayers. The first gunfire didn't come from her. It came from the town. 3 sharp cracks rolled up the canyon, pistol shots close and fast. Then the echo of shouting, boots on wood, the frantic chaos of men remembering how mortal they were. Maeve hesitated only a moment before swinging back into the saddle. She kicked her horse into a gallop, the animal's hooves throwing fire from the stone. By the time she hit the main street, night had swallowed everything but the gunfire. The saloon doors slammed open ahead of her, and a man stumbled out, bloody, wide-eyed, clutching his gut. He saw her silhouette in the lantern light, tried to speak, but fell into the dust before he could. Maeve stepped over him, pushing through the swinging doors. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and noise. Tables overturned, bottles shattered, the piano in the corner still playing a dying note. 2 men crouched behind the bar, firing wild through the haze. Another shape moved near the stairs, lean, tall, deliberate. Elias. He moved like a shadow that remembered being human. Hat low, coat long, rifle steady. When he turned slightly, the lamplight caught the side of his face. The same face from the poster, only older, harder, carved with the years between sin and survival. Maeve didn't speak. She just leveled her pistol. But he'd already seen her. Maeve, he said, just her name, but it landed like scripture. His voice hadn't changed, steady as a sermon, heavy with the kind of regret that no longer asks forgiveness. She almost didn't shoot. Almost. The first shot hit the bottle beside his head. Glass exploded, showering him with shards and light. He dropped behind the table, rolled, fired back, the bullet singing past her cheek close enough to sting. She ducked behind the pillar, heart hammering, not from fear but from the flood of memory. They traded fire like confessions, short, sharp, and bitter. Then silence. The saloon breathed again, full of smoke and ghosts. Maeve reloaded slow. You ran out of prayers yet, preacher? Elias's voice came low through the haze. Ran out of faith first. Good, she said. Saves me the trouble. Something moved near the stairs. One of the barmen, too drunk or too stupid to stay down. He lifted his pistol toward her. Elias saw him first. One clean shot. The man dropped before he could blink. Maeve froze, staring across the room. Elias had lowered his gun, not at her, but at the fool who'd nearly killed her. The echo of that shot hung heavy, like something neither of them could take back. Still playing savior, she said bitterly. He reloaded without looking up. Still getting yourself into hell. They faced each other then, two ghosts circling the same grave. Behind them, the saloon creaked. Someone moaned. The wind dragged through a cracked window, scattering ash across the floorboards. Maeve's pistol lowered, inch by inch, not for mercy but exhaustion. Elias broke the silence first. You tracking me for justice or for gold? She met his eyes. You already know the answer. He nodded once. Then you should have pulled the trigger when you had the chance. I did, she said. 5 years ago. Something flickered across his face. Pain, recognition, maybe both. Then the sound of horses outside cut through it. Maeve's head turned toward the door. More riders, 3, maybe 4. She knew that rhythm. Bounty men. Not his. Hers. Elias saw it too. You led them here. She shook her head. No, they led themselves. Doesn't matter, he said, stepping out from cover. We're both wanted ghosts now. The door burst open. A bullet splintered the post beside Maeve's ear. Another whined off the piano, cutting the strings in a shriek. Instinct took over. She dove behind the bar, landed beside Elias, both guns drawn, both breathing hard. For the first time in 5 years, they were side by side again. Not as lovers, not yet as enemies, but something older. Survivors. Outside, the riders shouted, circling. Inside, silence pressed like the pause before a storm. Elias turned to her, voice low. You still shoot straight? She met his eyes. Straighter than your sermons. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he tossed her a second revolver. Then we might just live till dawn. And together, for one last, terrible, inevitable night, they prepared to kill or die in the same room again. The fire burned low, spitting sparks into the chill air. Somewhere beyond the camp, coyotes sang to the moon, a song older than mercy. Maeve sat with her back to a boulder, her revolver across her knees. The coat she'd stolen off one of the dead bounty men hung loose around her shoulders. Her face was streaked with dried blood that wasn't hers. The saloon had gone quiet hours ago, swallowed by the dark and the dead. Across the fire, Elias Ward cleaned his rifle with the same calm she remembered from the man who once read scripture over graves. He hadn't said a word since they rode out together, not even when she'd asked if he still believed in God. Maybe he didn't know anymore. The flames crackled between them, soft and sharp. Didn't figure you'd ride with me again, she said finally. Elias didn't look up. Didn't figure I'd live to regret it. She smirked. You regret everything, preacher. That's your gift. He gave a quiet exhale, something between a sigh and a laugh. Used to be faith. Now it's just habit. Maeve tilted her head, studying him. His face was older, carved by weather and guilt, but his eyes were still the same, deep and relentless, like he was always seeing something just beyond her. She hated that look. Hated that it still made her remember the man who'd once whispered promises over her skin before turning her in for silver. The silence stretched. Wind combed through the dry grass, hissing secrets. Finally, Elias spoke. They'll keep coming, Maeve. The men after you. You mean after us, she corrected. He nodded. After us. She poked at the fire with a stick, watching the sparks drift upward and die. You could have stayed in Sable's rest. Collected my head after they were done. I could have, he said simply. But you didn't. He looked at her then, really looked. The weight in his gaze was something she couldn't name. Maybe I still owe you a prayer. Save it, she said, voice soft. God stopped listening when you betrayed me. He didn't flinch. Maybe he stopped listening when I believed you'd forgiven me. That silenced her. The fire popped. For a moment, the only sound was the quiet chewing of his horse and the whisper of wind through stone. She wrapped her arms around her knees, staring into the flames. You ever think about it? The canyon? Every night, he said. Do you see their faces? All of them. Then we're the same, she said. He shook his head. No, you made peace with what you did. She met his eyes, steady. Peace is just what guilt looks like when it's tired. The words hung there, hot as the fire. He didn't answer. Maeve leaned back, letting the cold creep through the gaps in her coat. The stars above were sharp and endless, like nails in a black coffin lid. She wondered if any of them remembered the faces she'd buried. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. Why'd you really spare me, Elias? He hesitated. Because killing you wouldn't bring back my brother. She nodded once. And chasing me? That was supposed to make me feel like I still believed in something. And does it? He looked into the fire. Ask me when the sun comes up. The conversation died again. Maeve watched him as he finished cleaning his rifle. The movements were practiced, almost sacred, the same hands that once held her, as if she were something worth saving. Now they cleaned the instrument that might kill her before morning. He set the weapon aside, reached into his coat, and pulled out a small flask. He drank once, then offered it across the flames. She hesitated, then took it. The whiskey burned all the way down, sharp, honest, real. You still drink like you pray, she muttered, desperate and slow. He gave a half-smile. And you still talk like sin's a virtue. Maeve's eyes flicked to him, and for the first time since the saloon, she let the edge of her guard slip. Maybe it is, she said. At least it keeps you warm. They sat in the quiet after that. Two silhouettes wrapped in firelight, each pretending they didn't notice the other, stealing glances through the smoke. When the wind shifted, Maeve heard something, a faint metallic rattle from the ridge. She froze, head lifting slightly. Elias heard it too. He stood, rifle in hand, scanning the dark horizon. The desert stretched out like a black sea, but movement whispered at the edges, riders distant but closing. 3, he said quietly. Maybe 4. Maeve was already on her feet, cinching her saddlebag. You lead them this time? His jaw tightened. I told you, Maeve, save it, she snapped. We move. They kicked dirt over the fire and mounted fast. The moon was high, pale as bone, lighting their path in shades of silver. They rode low, cutting through dry creek beds and broken ridges. The desert swallowed sound, but the chase had its own pulse, hooves echoing like heartbeats too loud to hide. By dawn, the horizon was a thin ribbon of light. The riders were closer now, no doubt about it. Maeve could see the dust rising behind them. She turned her horse toward the rocks. We'll lose them in the bluffs, Elias said. She shook her head. You'll lose me, maybe. They're after me, preacher. After both of us now. Then you should have left when you had the chance. Maybe I didn't want to. Her eyes flicked to him. Just a glance, but it landed deep. For a moment, everything between them went silent. Only the wind spoke, carrying with it the ghosts of the lives they'd both burned. They reached a narrow gorge, the kind of place only fools or fugitives would ride into. The stone walls closed around them like the ribs of some dead god. Maeve dismounted first, tying her horse to a low branch. Elias followed. Their boots crunched over sand and shell rock. She drew her revolver, checked the chamber. 5 rounds. He did the same. Here, he said, tossing her an extra bullet belt. She caught it, raised an eyebrow. Still my guardian angel. He gave her a look. Just hate seeing good aim go to waste. She smirked. You always did. The riders' voices echoed faintly through the gorge. Closer now, maybe minutes away. Maeve crouched beside a boulder, steadying her breathing. Elias knelt beside her, rifle ready. The light crept slow over the canyon rim, turning the sand to fire. Funny, she murmured, almost to herself. Used to dream about dying with you once. Elias didn't look away from the rocks ahead. Then maybe we're closer to peace than we think. She smiled. Not kind, not cruel, just weary. You still pray before you kill? He chambered around. Only when I don't want to miss. The first rider appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the rising sun. Maeve took aim, heart steady. Elias did the same. And for one breathless instant, before the shooting started, they glanced at each other. 2 ghosts sharing the same graveyard sunrise. The sun rose slow and cruel over the canyon, setting the ridges ablaze with color, crimson, gold, and the pale gray of gun smoke. The first shot cracked through the silence like thunder. Maeve dropped behind a rock, grit spraying her cheek. Elias fired once, clean and calm, his rifle echoing off the stone. One of the riders pitched sideways from his saddle, dust pluming around the fall. The others spread out, shouts bouncing across the gorge. "To left," he called. "Three," she corrected, peering down the sights of her revolver. "One's flanking right." The next gunfire came like a storm. Bullets screamed past, chipping stone, tearing through dry sage. Maeve ducked lower, reloading fast. Her heart wasn't pounding. It was steady, like it always got when death came calling. Elias moved to cover her flank, rifle snapping, then reloading smooth. For a moment, they worked like old ghosts, practiced, wordless, deadly. Then a bullet ricocheted near his boot, and he stumbled. "Ward," she shouted. "I'm fine," but blood darkened his sleeve, soaking the fabric. Maeve swore under her breath, firing twice at the ridge. One rider fell, screaming. Another kept coming, a lean man with a black bandana and eyes like iron nails. She knew that look, bounty eyes, the kind that didn't blink until the job was done. "Elias," she hissed, "we need to move." He was already pushing himself up, jaw tight, clutching his rifle in his good hand. "You go first." Not this time. They ran low through the gorge, the air thick with dust and gunpowder. The smell of blood followed them, copper and heat. Behind, the last rider spurred forward, firing wild. A bullet grazed Maeve's thigh. She gritted her teeth, pain blooming hot. They broke into an open stretch where the canyon widened into a field of sunburnt stone. The light was blinding, everything gold and death bright. Elias dropped behind a boulder, pulling her down with him. She gasped, pressing her hand to her leg. "How bad?" he asked. "Just a kiss," she said through clenched teeth. He tore a strip from his sleeve and tied it around her leg, quick and firm. "You always did draw trouble." She gave a pained laugh. "And you always followed it." He smiled, small, fleeting. "Guess I never learned." The sound of hooves drew closer. The last rider appeared at the mouth of the gorge, reloading as he came. He dismounted slow, confident. Maeve could see his face now, scarred, weathered, mouth like a knife wound. "Maeve Callahan," he shouted, voice carrying. "You got something belongs to me." She lifted her revolver over the rock. "You can come take it." He laughed. "You and your preacher boy never could die quiet." Elias stiffened beside her. "He knows us." "Yeah," she muttered. "They always do." The bounty man advanced, boots crunching over stone. His revolver gleamed, etched with little crosses along the barrel. "A preacher's killer, poetic." Elias glanced at her. "You trust me?" Maeve gave a bitter grin. "That's the joke, ain't it?" He looked at her once more, a long, steady look that felt like a goodbye, then stood up, rifle raised. "Elias." Too late. He stepped out from cover, drawing the rider's fire. Bullets tore into the air around him, each one closer than the last. Maeve rose just enough to aim. Her revolver barked once, twice. The bounty man jerked, staggered, fell. Silence. The echo faded, replaced by the hiss of wind. Elias sank to one knee, rifle slipping from his grip. Maeve's stomach dropped. She scrambled to him, catching his shoulder as he fell. Blood poured from his side, dark and thick. "No," she whispered. "Not like this." He tried to smile, but it came out more as a grimace. "Guess we found that peace you talked about." "Shut up," she said fiercely, pressing her hands to the wound. "You don't get to die on me again." His hand caught hers, weak, trembling. "Maeve." She shook her head, tears cutting through the dust on her face. "You son of a bitch. You always were bad at leaving." He coughed, blood streaking his lip. "And you were always better at surviving." The light around them shifted, that strange stillness before the day fully wakes. The desert went quiet, as if holding its breath. Elias's eyes fluttered. "Tell me something," he murmured. "What? Did you ever forgive me?" Maeve swallowed hard. The words stuck like thorns. Finally, she said, "I tried." He nodded slowly. "That's enough." And then, with the faintest smile, he went still. The world narrowed to dust and wind and the weight of him in her arms. She stayed there for a long time, long enough for the sun to rise high and the flies to find them. When she finally stood, her hands were red. The desert stretched endless in every direction. Maeve picked up his rifle, slung it across her back, and mounted her horse. She didn't look back. Behind her, the fire still smoldered in the canyon, the last trace of everything they'd been. The wind was wrong that morning, too still, too heavy. Even the vultures stayed grounded, their black wings folded like prayers no one answered anymore. Maeve rode with Elias's rifle across her back and his ghost beside her. She hadn't buried him. The desert had taken care of that. The sands always did. They swallowed everything sooner or later, bones, sins, names. But ghosts lingered. She rode west, chasing a sun that felt more like judgment than warmth. Every mile stretched thinner between who she'd been and who she was becoming. The wound on her thigh burned, the bandage stiff with dried blood. She didn't stop. Stopping meant remembering. By dusk, she reached the hollow town of Calvary's Edge, a name too kind for what was left. Half the buildings were burned-out shells. The saloon leaned like a drunk on its last legs. There was a church, but no cross, only a splintered frame reaching toward the dusk. Inside the saloon, a single lamp flickered. The air smelled of whiskey and ghost stories. Maeve pushed the door open with the barrel of her gun. A man sat at the far end of the bar, older, unshaven, eyes like he'd seen the same hell she had. He didn't turn when she entered. "You're late," he said. Her stomach twisted. She knew that voice. Elias. Her hand froze halfway to her revolver. "You're dead." He smiled, tired, crooked. "I was." The devil's got poor aim. She stared. His skin was pale, too pale. A thin scar ran along his ribs where the bullet should have taken his life. But his eyes, they burned the same, blue as morning over the badlands. Maeve took a step back. "You're not real." "Maybe not," he said, standing. "But you came anyway." He walked closer, boots silent on the warped floor. The lamp light trembled between them. "Why here?" she asked. "Because this is where it started," he said. "And where it ends." Maeve's voice hardened. "You don't get to talk about endings. You made yours back in that canyon." He nodded. "Maybe I did. But there's mercy in the devil's work, Maeve. Sometimes he lets us finish what we left undone." Her jaw clenched. "Mercy? That what you call it?" He stepped closer until they were inches apart. The smell of dust and blood clung to him. "You're still running from the truth." She glared up at him. "And what truth is that?" "That you loved me," he said softly. "Even when you shouldn't have. Even when I didn't deserve it." Her breath hitched. The revolver in her hand wavered, lowering slightly. "You lied to me," she said. "You used me." "I did," he whispered. "And I've been paying for it every night since." Something in her broke, not loudly, but like ice cracking underfoot. She turned away, blinking hard. "You're just a ghost in my head." "Then shoot me," he said. "If I'm not real, it won't matter." Maeve froze. The gun trembled in her grip. He opened his arms, not defiant but ready. "Go on, Maeve. Show me what you've become." The hammer clicked back. Her hand shook. She could feel her heart hammering, the sweat on her palms. "God help me," she whispered. The shot tore through the quiet, echoing through the empty town. When the smoke cleared, the saloon was empty again. No body, no blood, just the sound of her own breath and the whisper of the wind outside. Maeve lowered the gun. Her chest ached. The world swayed. She stumbled outside, into the burning dusk. The sky was the color of old fire, red and bruised. She sank to her knees in the dust, clutching the revolver to her chest. And then, faint and far off, she heard a voice, his voice, carried by the wind. "Mercy's not for the dying, Maeve. It's for the ones who live." She looked up, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. The horizon shimmered with heat and ghosts. And for a heartbeat, she thought she saw him, standing in the distance, hat in hand, eyes soft with something like forgiveness. Then the mirage faded, and she was alone again. Maeve wiped her face with a shaking hand. "Damn you," she whispered. "Damn you for not staying dead." The wind answered, rustling through the dry grass like laughter or prayer. She holstered the revolver, mounted her horse, and turned south, where the road bled into the horizon. Behind her, Calvary's edge sank into the shadows. Ahead, the desert waited, endless, merciless, alive. The desert was different now. It wasn't the cruel expanse that had swallowed her once. It was quieter, almost tender in the way it held the morning light. A land that had run out of judgment. Maeve Calder rode through it like something half alive. Her horse limped, her body ached, and the revolver at her hip hung heavier than sin. Every sound, the rasp of wind, the creak of the saddle, carried the echo of another life. Elias's life. His voice still haunted her in the spaces between thought and silence. Mercy's not for the dying, Maeve. It's for the ones who live. She didn't know what mercy felt like. Only the ache that came after the gunfire stopped. Days bled into nights, and the line between them blurred. She rode until the sky broke into flame, then collapsed under the stars, listening to the coyotes sing for things they'd never have. On the seventh day, she reached the ridge above Redwater Canyon, where it had all begun years ago. The rocks still bore the black scars of fire. The canyon floor below shimmered with heat and memory. She dismounted, boots crunching on gravel, and walked to the edge. The wind tugged at her coat, dry and warm as an old breath. Below her lay the skeleton of the world she'd burned down. A rusted pistol, a torn hat, the bones of a wagon. Time had done its burying, but not enough. Maeve knelt, pressing her hand into the sand. "Elias," she whispered, "I came back." No answer, just the wind curling up from the canyon like smoke from a dying fire. She reached into her coat and pulled out his old badge, bent, blackened by the blast that had nearly taken them both. She'd kept it ever since that night. Not out of love, not out of guilt, but because some part of her refused to forget that once there'd been a man who believed she could be more than a weapon. She set it down in the dust. "I don't know what you were, preacher, but you sure as hell weren't done with me." The sky began to change, pink and gold melting into the blue, dawn bleeding its soft mercy across the desert. Maeve stared at it, the way she might look at a miracle she didn't believe in. Then she heard it, a whisper, faint, warm, carried by the wind. Her name. She turned sharply, hand on her revolver. Nothing, just the canyon breathing. Still, her chest tightened. Her eyes burned. She holstered the gun slowly. "Fine," she muttered. "You win. I'll try." It wasn't a prayer, not really, but it was close enough. Maeve rose and started walking down the ridge. Each step felt like a confession. The world was still broken, still cruel, but it was hers to face. As she neared the canyon floor, the wind picked up, warm, relentless. The sand swirled around her boots, wrapping her in a storm of light. Through it, she thought she saw him again, just a shape at first, then a man, hat tilted, hand resting on the hilt of his gun. Elias Ward, or what was left of him. She didn't stop walking, didn't blink, didn't breathe. When she reached the bottom, the shape was gone. Only footprints remained, fading fast in the shifting sand. Maeve smiled just barely. "That's all right," she said to the wind. "You keep walking. I'll find my own road." She mounted her horse and turned toward the horizon. The morning sun caught her face, for the first time, soft instead of harsh. She rode slow, steady, her shadow stretching long across the land that had tried to kill her and failed. Behind her, the canyon whispered its last secret. Ahead, the road wound endless and red beneath the rising light. The West had no mercy left to give, but maybe, just maybe, it had enough room for one more soul to find her way home.